Hey guys, Sherman here. Welcome to the first episode of my video series I'm doing called Knives 101, where I'll basically be talking about the very basics of knives, blade steel, handle design, blade shape, edge geometry, how to sharpen, all that different kind of stuff. And these videos are really driven towards those of you who are just starting out in the knife world, just starting to collect, just getting interested in knives, or just getting started in the community. Or perhaps you've been collecting for a while and you just don't know that much about knives. And that's really what I want to try to get at. I want to try to teach some of the possibly younger or less knowledgeable knife enthusiasts. And yeah, I hope I can do that and be somewhat of a good, I guess you can say, teacher. Alright, so each episode I'm going to go through and discuss a specific topic. And I think this one is a good first episode topic, and that is blade steel. Blade steel is one of the biggest beginner traps there is, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way whatsoever, but companies will really monopolize on the fact that a lot of people don't really know a lot about knife steel, and they'll just throw the most extravagant sounding steel in the world and give it a slogan and hope that everybody will buy it. Not every company does that, but there are instances of that happening. That happens throughout the world. It's called marketing. Alright, so I have a few knives here to represent probably some of the most common blade steels you're going to come across being a beginner knife enthusiast / collector, user, and whatnot. Okay, first of all, like I said, the beginner's mentality of it is, and we're all guilty of it, I was guilty of it in the beginning, blade steel is everything. That's the beginning mentality. And that's not at all it. Blade steel is not even half of what makes a knife a knife. I'll make a comparison. The best way I can compare it is the engine on a car. Alright, first thing you hear, if you hear V8, 300 horsepower, you think, alright, that sounds awesome, I need that. Yeah, it's human mentality. We think the bigger and better it is, that must mean we need it. That's what people probably think about in the beginning when they hear these extravagant exotic blade steels, and people are always talking about, man, you need this blade steel because that's better than such and such blade steel. Well, to say it's really better than another, to say that one steel is better than another is saying what? It's saying you prefer it more than another, so you're just going to say it's better? There is no better blade steel than another at everything. Every single knife blade steel has a specific intended purpose that will help certain people in certain tasks. You have to go into it knowing what the blade steel is, what it's good for, and how it's going to aid you in your day-to-day life. Like I said, every blade steel works differently and helps perform certain tasks better than others for certain people. Now, it probably came out sounding like a mouthful. Here again, I'm going to use the car analogy. Okay, you have some cars that have big engines, they go faster. That some people may really like that. Some people want fuel economy, so they buy cars, with 4 cylinders. Okay. To get one thing specific you need, you often have to sacrifice something else. If you want speed and performance, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice fuel economy. If you want straight up fuel economy, you want to get that 40 miles to the gallon, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice speed and looks. To be honest, a lot of the time. A lot of the really sexy cars are gas guzzlers. Okay, same thing with knife blade steels. You have one steel that, say, can cut 100 cardboard boxes and not get dull. That could also be the same blade steel that will rust on you by carrying it in your pocket and sweating for one day. Okay? Just like that. It's the best way I can describe it. So, like I said, different steels will help different people. And I'm going to try to discuss that here in this video using facts, and I'm going to interject my opinions here and there. Like I said, these are just a very, very few blade steel representations here. Alright, probably one of the most common you're going to come across in the very, very beginning of your knife collection, because these are usually the cheaper knives. When you're first getting into knives, you probably don't have a whole lot of money to spend, and you're probably not going to want to spend a whole lot of money. So one of the most common blade steels you're going to come across in cheaper knives in today's market is ACR13 MOV. I know it's a mouthful. ACR13 MOV. There are a lot of different variants. Kershaw's using it a lot now. Spyderco's been using it, of course, in their Tenacious line. And and Benchmade has been using it with some of their knives. There's also 14 CR 19, there's 13 CR 17, there's 17 CR, so on. Basically pretty much all the same thing. But mostly you're going to come across 8CR13 MOV. Now, MOV, it's a Chinese stainless steel, okay? It's not a steel that's known for its edge retention, so if that's what you're going for, then it's not going to be that great. 8CR13 MOV and all your other MOV steels, or if you hear CR in the name, they're not going to have amazing edge retention, meaning they're not going to be able to stay sharp as long as some other blade steels. However, since it is a soft steel and it will get dull a little bit quicker, a soft steel is much easier to sharpen. Here again, if you're just starting out collecting knives, you're probably not going to know how to sharpen them. And so I think ease of sharpening is important. So I think when you're just starting to get into knives, this is probably going to be your best blade steel to stick with for a while. And that's any of the CR MOV steels. Like I said, it's easy, very, very easy to sharpen, but it can take a hair shaving sharp edge. And it is going to be pretty rust resistant, so it's, like I said, it is a stainless steel. But stainless doesn't mean that it's never going to stain. It just means it's going to stain less. Quite literally. Just think about it like that. Stainless steel will rust. It just takes much longer. Alright, so this is probably going to rust on you for a while. Also, let me just talk about the steel in this way as well. You have some steels that are harder than others, but harder doesn't mean stronger. That's a huge misconception that people have. Think of it like this: ceramic. Ceramic is harder than steel. Okay? It's harder than steel. Is it stronger? No. You can drop a ceramic pot and it will break. You can drop a plate of steel and it won't. Okay? That is because the harder something gets, the more brittle it gets. So since ceramic is harder than steel, it's brittle. So it's going to break much easier than steel. Steel being more flexible, it's going to give. Okay? 8CR13 MOV steel is a soft steel. It's flexible. Okay? So when cutting through things like electrical cord, sometimes the metals, the copper or whatever kind of conductive strand they're using, sometimes it can damage your edge. It can make the edge get chips in it. This one has a small chip right there. If you're using a harder steel, the chip could be much bigger. And you can also cause the edge to roll. And that just basically means, like think of this as the edge. Like if you're looking down a knife like this. This being the edge. If you cut something really hard, the edge will kind of roll to one side. It's very hard to see, but it will do that, and it's very hard on some steels to get that roll out without permanently damaging the edge. Okay, 8CR13, the edge will slightly roll, but with a little bit of sharpening, you can get that edge back, from this back to looking like this. So it's very easy to fix. It's a steel that can really take a lot of abuse, because like I said, it is softer. It will give more than other steels. So for hard use, 8CR13 MOV is a really good steel in my personal opinion because of that fact. I've used it on my Kershaw 1 ton, and it works great. It's a good steel. Don't let people tell you that, oh, this isn't 8CR13 MOV, it's not as good as S30V, so you don't need that knife. Well, it's better, here again, better than what? Is it as good, is S30V better at holding an edge? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a better steel. That just means if you want a steel that's going to cost a lot more and you're not going to have to sharpen that often, yeah, it's a better steel. But some people don't want that, so it's not better for everybody. So that's the mentality you have to get out of your head in the very beginning of the knife collecting. Stop looking at blade steel like it's everything. It's not what make and break the knife. It's what steel is best suited for you. Personally, yeah, you hear all the time, S30v. S30v is the best steel in the world. Okay? My personal favorite steel to this day is VG10. Most people will tell you VG10 isn't as good as S30v. As good as, here again, as good as what? to me, VG10 performs exactly how I need it to, and I love it. VG10 is my preferred blade steel. But like I said, everybody's opinion is going to vary. Like I said, that's how you got to go into it. You got to look at it with that attitude of, you know, blade steel isn't everything. You need the one that's going to perform best for you. All right. So that's part philosophy and part just how it is. You can't look at it of just blade steel is everything. But that is a very, very, very common beginner's mentality. And here again, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I was the exact same way. All right. Another one you're going to come across is 440C. 440C is a pretty common steel. Now, it is commonly used on knives that are cheaper. You know, your Bud K knives, you always see 440C steel. You know, Boker mostly uses 440C, especially the Boker Plus knives. And also a lot of custom knife makers use their knives out of 440C. It's a very good carbon steel. And it performs well. It holds an edge pretty well. It holds an edge longer than ACR 13 MOV. It might rust faster. Here again, not sure. In my experience, it's about the same. Technically, if you go by, it should rust a little bit faster, but I haven't had that experience. Like I said, it holds an edge pretty well. It can take a pretty wicked edge. I find, just with my experience, that my ACR 13 MOV steel blades can take an edge better. You know, they can take a sharper edge. Some steels can take a sharper edge than others. Here again, that's just a fact. But 440C is an overall good steel. It was used for years. This was the first one. This was like pretty much the first S30V. When 440C first came out, it was the highest end steel you could get, pretty much. You know, for commercial grade knives. A lot of custom makers used it. Also, since we're talking about that, I kind of glanced over this as well. Heat treatment. What is that? I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot of times. Heat treatment is the process of taking the blade. You're going to take the blade and you're going to stick it. I'm not a metallurgist, so I don't know the exact technical terms of everything or how to explain it very well. You know, they stick the blade stock in an oven. They heat it up to, you know, hundreds and hundreds of degrees, and that basically hardens the blade. That's what makes it able to take an edge. If you don't heat treat the knife, if you don't heat treat the blade, it cannot take a good edge. It just can't. Everything starts with the heat treatment. Every company does their heat treatments differently, and some companies have theirs shipped off to have done by another heat treater. Everybody does it differently, and you're going to hear the term Rockwell. Rockwell is the scale of hardness. Okay. For example, SE knives, they heat treat their blades to a 57 Rockwell. 57 is pretty hard. That means it's going to be a hard steel. Tops knives, Rockwell, theirs at about a 58 to 59. So that means, you know, and Tops knives also have 1095 high carbon steel blades, just like SE uses. Alright, so same exact blade steel. Same steel, but Tops makes theirs harder. Does that mean that it's going to be a better steel? No, it just means it's going to hold an edge a little bit longer than an SE knife will. Alright, so you can have two knives of the exact same blade steel, but the two companies are going to execute it a little bit differently. Alright, Spyderco's CPM S30V. CPM is the maker of that particular S30V. It was patented by them, but other companies will use S30V. But they'll do it slightly differently than Spyderco does it. It might be harder, it might have better rust resistance, whatever. But basically the Rockwell just has to do with the hardness of the knife, or the hardness of the blade. But here again, as I was saying earlier, that doesn't always mean everything. Alright, since we're just on the subject, this is going to be pretty much the holy grail when you're first starting out, is S30V. CPM S30V is a little bit better than all the other S30Vs. CPM, Crucible Powdered Metallurgy. Some people told me I'm saying that wrong, so I might be, but that's what the CPM in a nutshell stands for. You can Google it if you'd like to get better information. CPM S30V is a powdered steel. Alright, that's just what it is. It's a fine grained steel, which means that all the particles are bonded together on a smaller level and just constantly building up until you get the finished product. Here again, I'm not a metallurgist. I may have just butchered that analogy, okay? So forgive me. Basically, that means that this steel structure is going to be amazing. That means it's going to hold an edge incredibly well, take a very sharp edge, and it's going to be very rust resistant, and it's going to be somewhat chip resistant. So this steel, S30V, is a very hard steel. But it's not so hard that it's going to chip easily. It will, but it's not that common. It will roll before it will chip, which is good. So S30V is a great steel for edge retention, for rust resistance, but it's going to be much harder to sharpen. This takes a slight degree of skill to be able to sharpen correctly. So here again, when you're first starting out, you might want to, overlook this steel at first. That and this knife, or any knife with S30V, is going to be top dollar. This knife's about $120 as opposed to this one being $30. So you do pay for more for the higher end blade steels. But like I said, that does not mean this blade steel is better. It just performs better than another steel at certain things. Alright. Another steel you're going to come across is 154 Cm, most commonly used by Benchmade knives. A lot of other companies use 154 Cm. It is a great steel. 154 Cm. It is a machine steel. From what I've been told, it's a high-speed machine steel, which means they use these in a lot of industrial machinery, this same blade steel. It is a great steel. It is a hard steel. So it's going to, in my personal experience, this steel will chip easier than S30V. Alright? But this steel is easy to sharpen, in my experience. So again, 154 Cm is a great blade steel. It's going to perform differently for some people than others. It's a little bit cheaper, runs cheaper than S30V, and this is probably most people's favorite steel, I would venture to guess. Just because it almost has the best of all worlds. It's easy to sharpen, has great edge retention, can take a razor edge, and it's the good overall. It's the happy medium. Then, of course, like I said, my favorite, VG10. VG10 sharpens, in my experience, very, very easily. It holds an edge incredibly well. I've never had a problem with my VG10 chipping or rolling. And it can just take a wicked edge. And it has amazing, amazing rust resistance. So, it's a really good steel. It's not as hard as 154 Cm, from what I've been told. But here again, that doesn't really make it better or worse, does it? Another very popular blade steel you're going to come across, especially here again with your cheaper knives, even though they can get pretty expensive, is AUS 8, also known as AUS 8. And of course they have AUS 6, which is a little bit softer than this. Usually, the lower the number you get, the softer the steel is in that category. Now, I've been skipping over a lot of different steels. There's also, where there's S30V, there's also S90V, S35 VN. But here again, I'm not going to really go into all that. I'm just basically summarizing some common blade steels. S90 and S35 VN are not very common. And 440C, you also have 420, 440A. You have a lot of different variations. 154 Cm, you also have CPM 154, and so on and so forth. So, but like I said, those are not very common steels. In today's market, AUS 6 is not very common. But they also go, from what I've been told, all the way up to AUS 12, which I've never seen before. But this is AUS 8. AUS 8 is a great steel. It has pretty good edge retention. It has a lot of the same properties as HCR13 MOV. It has good corrosion resistance, but it will also it's also soft enough where it won't chip. It doesn't chip very easily. It's going to maintain an edge a little bit longer than HCR13. But, like I said, it has that same kind of property of it's hard enough to do what you need it to do, but still soft enough where it probably won't break under some abuse. It has a little bit more give. It's a little bit more forgiving. than some other your harder steels. So Ausate's a good steel. I've always found it to be very adequate for what I need it for. And like I said, you can usually find it on cheaper knives, this one being the very, very popular Rat1 by Ontario. You get for $30. It's an incredible knife, even among collectors who have all these $400 customs. This one's been a little slightly modified from what your normal one is. But Ausate, great steel. Another somewhat common one if you're into Kershaws. This is a Kershaw proprietary steel. And that is, there's Sandvik Steel, which is a Swedish steel. This one being 14C28N. And their older Sandvik steel was 13C26N, I think, something like that. But 14C28N is their new steel that they're using for the better part of the last few years now. It's an okay steel. I do not prefer it. It can sharpen up pretty easily. I don't find it to have very good edge retention. It has pretty good rust resistance, though. So like I said, it is a stainless steel, but it is a pretty good steel. But it's pretty much a proprietary Kershaw steel. So I just want to throw that in there, all you guys who like the Kershaws. And here again, and another steel you're probably going to come across a lot, mostly, pretty much only with fixed bladed knives, non-folding knives. And that is 1095. 1095 is a high carbon steel, meaning there are more carbides in it, which is going to make this a harder than most steel. The steel is going to be harder than most other steels, but it's going to rust. Here again, what I was talking about earlier with the engine analogy, you get better edge retention with this steel than you probably would even S30V, in my experience. But it's going to rust a lot quicker than S30V. Alright, so to get one, you're going to have to sacrifice another. But here again, you can get this steel and have it rock weld or heat treated to make it harder. So every steel can be even harder, but the harder you get, the more brittle it's going to get. This steel in the SE offering, being rock weld at about 57, it's hard enough to have amazing edge retention even after a lot of abuse, but still soft enough where it's not going to chip or break on you very easily. So 1095 is a great outdoor steel for bushcrafting. A lot of people are going to differ because they say, you know, it is going to rust. With some proper maintenance, it's not going to rust as quickly as you would think. But it's a great outdoor steel because it can take so much abuse, you know, more so than other steels. So it is a really good bushcraft steel. It's a very good utility steel, all right, for just everyday carry. This is a great utility steel. Another one that I forgot to bring out here is good for that is D2. Here again, you can have D1 steel. You can have OD2, which I've never even really seen. I've just heard about. But D2 is a very, very hard tool steel. They use on a lot of regular tools other than knives. And it's very hard steel. It has pretty good corrosion resistance. But anyway, I just wanted to basically sum up a few common steels that you guys are going to come across when you're first starting to collect knives. And you know, you're looking on the knife websites and you see the blade steels, but maybe you don't really know that much about them. So you look at YouTube videos, people say, well, these are better than others, and yada yada yada. I wanted to kind of take you on a non-biased side of the spectrum here. Just tell you straight up how blade steels are. They are what they are. Every steel is better for a certain person. You know, if you're a fisherman, you're not going to want a high carbon steel like 1095. If you're around water a lot, you're going to want a very corrosion resistant steel like, you know, VG10 or S30v. If you want to really abuse your knife and you don't really know how to sharpen a whole lot, you know, you want ACR 13 MOV or AUS 8. If you know, you don't really use your knives a whole lot and you just want them to perform like crazy, have great edge retention, you know, you might want 154 CM or S30v, you know, so on and so forth. There's a steel for every intended task. Not even to mention, like I said, you know, the specialty steels like the Benchmade H1, or I'm sorry, the Spyderco H1 and the Benchmade H2O steels, which are very, very corrosion resistant. You can leave in salt water for a week and they won't develop hardly any corrosion. But I'm just saying, you know, you got to read into your blade steels, guys. See how they will perform for you personally. So, hope you guys enjoyed. This has been a very long-winded video. But here again, this is meant for the beginners in the knife world who want a little bit more information that other people can't tell them, or they just haven't heard yet, or knife websites won't tell them. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. And please stay tuned for future episodes. Here again, I'm going to be doing a bunch of different topics. Alright guys, have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay sharp, and God bless. Sherman614, peace.